Some presidents are remembered for the wars they fought, others for the freedoms they expanded. And then there were those remembered for something far less dramatic, for trying to hold a country together when every force was pulling it apart. Millard Fillmore was one of those men. When he stepped into the presidency, the United States was not marching confidently toward its future. It was hesitating, arguing, fracturing. Slavery, expansion, and identity had turned politics into a slow-burning fuse. Everyone sensed the explosion coming. Fillmore did not believe it had to happen. Millard Fillmore was born in 1800 in a log cabin in upstate New York, into a family so poor that formal education was almost a luxury. His childhood was defined by labor. As a boy, he was apprenticed to a cloth maker, working long hours for little reward. But what set him apart was not privilege or talent, it was hunger, a hunger to learn. He taught himself to read. He borrowed books when he could. He studied late into the night by candlelight, determined to escape the limits of his birth. Education was not refinement to him, it was survival. Eventually, Fillmore trained as a lawyer, rising through sheer discipline and persistence. He entered politics as a Whig, a party that believed in congressional authority, economic development, and moderation. Fillmore distrusted extremes. He believed stability mattered more than spectacle. That belief would define his presidency and seal his reputation. By the late 1840s, Fillmore had built a respectable but unremarkable political career. In 1848, he was chosen as vice president to Zachary Taylor, a popular military hero with little political experience. The ticket won. Fillmore returned to his familiar role, waiting. Then, in July 1850, President Taylor died suddenly. Millard Fillmore became President of the United States. He inherited a nation teetering on collapse. The Mexican-American War had vastly expanded U.S. territory. The question was unavoidable. Would slavery expand with it? Southern states threatened secession. Northern states resisted any compromise that strengthened slavery. Congress was deadlocked. Violence simmered beneath the debates. Fillmore believed the Union itself was at risk. His response was the Compromise of 1850, a package of laws intended to calm the crisis. It admitted California as a free state, organized new territories with the possibility of popular sovereignty, ended the slave trade in Washington, D.C., and strengthened the Fugitive Slave Act. It was the last provision that would define Fillmore's legacy. The Fugitive Slave Act required citizens in free states to assist in the capture of escaped enslaved people. It denied the accused the right to testify in their own defense. It placed the federal government squarely behind the enforcement of slavery beyond the South. Fillmore signed the compromise into law. He believed compromise was necessary. He believed the Constitution must be enforced. And he believed that preserving the Union, even through deeply flawed laws, was preferable to civil war. He insisted the Fugitive Slave Act be enforced. This decision shattered his support in the North. Abolitionists saw him as complicit in human suffering. Former allies turned against him. Protests erupted. Resistance hardened. What Fillmore hoped would calm the nation instead exposed its moral fault lines. Yet his presidency was not without achievement. He stabilized the federal government during one of its most dangerous moments. He strengthened the Navy. He expanded trade and diplomatic engagement, most notably approving the expedition that would open Japan to the West, an action that reshaped global history. But these successes were eclipsed by slavery. Fillmore personally disliked the institution, but he believed the Constitution protected it where it existed. He was not a crusader, he was a legalist. His loyalty was to order, to institutions, to continuity. History would move in a different direction. In 1852, Fillmore sought election in his own right. He failed. The Whig Party, torn apart by sectional conflict, soon collapsed entirely. New political forces rose, forces far less interested in compromise. As Fillmore left office, the country drifted steadily toward war. When the Civil War finally erupted in 1861, Fillmore supported the Union. He condemned secession, but he remained skeptical of radical change. He criticized aspects of the war and later opposed parts of Reconstruction, fearing that too much transformation too quickly would create new divisions rather than heal old ones. By then, history had already passed judgment. Millard Fillmore became known as one of America's least memorable presidents. Too cautious, too passive, too willing to enforce injustice in the name of order. Compared to Lincoln, he seemed small. Compared to abolitionists, morally timid. But this judgment, while understandable, is incomplete. Fillmore governed in an impossible moment. Every available option carried catastrophic consequences. Immediate confrontation might have triggered war sooner under worse conditions. Delay bought time. Time for populations to grow, economies to develop, and political movements to mature. Whether that delay was mercy or mistake remains debated. What is certain is that Fillmore reveals a truth about leadership that history often prefers to ignore. Not all failures are dramatic, not all compromises are cowardly, and not all caution is weakness. Fillmore believed that law, not passion, held civilization together. He believed that once institutions collapsed, nothing stood between society and chaos. His tragedy was that the institutions he trusted were already rotting from within. When he died in 1874, the Union he tried to preserve still existed, but at the cost of a devastating war he had hoped to prevent. His name faded. His presidency became a footnote. Yet his life leaves behind a question that remains uncomfortably relevant. What should a leader do when every path leads to injustice or violence or both? Fillmore chose delay. He chose legality. He chose order. History chose a different solution. And perhaps that is why Fillmore remains so difficult to judge. Not because he lacked conviction, but because his convictions belonged to a world that was already disappearing. Sometimes history is not shaped by those who choose sides, but by those who hesitate, hoping the storm might pass before the house collapses. Millard Fillmore stood in that silence, and the storm did not pass.